I didn't realize how many books I'd read in June until this very moment. Let's not talk about the fact that I'm filming this on July the 14th. Like, I've had 2 weeks to film this wrap up, and every time I've had the chance to, I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. And we're halfway through July. So I think it's time to do this, because if I don't do it now, like, I never will, and there'll be no point, because it'll be like the end of July. So let's just get this done. I read quite a few books this month. I haven't even counted them, so I guess we'll find out at the same time. I first want to go through a couple of Amazon original novellas. I read 5 from the Obsession collection, so we're just going to discuss them very briefly because they are novellas. I'm going to list them from my least favorite to my most favorite, but they were all relatively good. Like, as far as Amazon original collections go, this I think has been my favorite collectively. So the first story I have, my least favorite, was called People Are Like Them. From memory, this follows a street, and all the couples in each house decide to have like I don't even know what they call it in the story. Like, they start the night at one couple's house for entrees, and they go to the next person's house for dinner, and then the next person's house for dessert. But it becomes very apparent that every single person on the street is obsessed with the newest couple, like the most attractive couple, the youngest couple. But things aren't always what they seem. And it was fun. It was quick. But I'm never going to go back to it, and I'm probably going to forget what happened in it. I actually don't know if what I'm telling you is in fact true. I could be wrong right now. It could be a completely different novella, but from memory, I enjoyed it. My next favorite was called The Heart of a Mother. This woman is desperate, basically, to find her daughter that she gave up for adoption when she was a lot younger, and basically she overlooks a lot of red flags to find her daughter. That's all I'm going to say, because these are such short novellas. Like, I can't really give you much of the plot, or else I'm just going to spoil the entire plot. But this one was kind of, it was really sad by the end. It was actually really depressing, and I was like, oh good, like, that put me in a fantastic mood. Next favorite was one called Just a Girl. This will spark feminine rage. This is for everyone who hates the Andrew Tates of the world. This book, novella I should say, follows a girl who has a really shitty interaction with a guy on Tinder. Like, he straight up misogynistic, absolute piece of shit. She exposes him on TikTok being like, hey, if you talk to this guy, this is kind of what you can expect. And the internet blows up, and she starts getting death threats and all the kind of shit you'd expect from crazy people who cannot accept that sometimes they are not right. And it enraged me more than anything else. I think there was an attempt at a plot twist towards the end, but I completely wrote that off. Feminine rage in a novella. Next, The Mosquito. This one was actually so relatable. I am someone that if there is a mosquito anywhere in the immediate vicinity, I am the person they are going to choose to bite. This follows a guy whose wife has just asked for a separation, and he decides to go on a kind of like a couple's vacation with a bunch of his friends, but there happens to be a widower there, and they are kind of the only 2 singles, so they kind of get paired up to spend time together during this vacation. But this widower, absolutely infuriating. He's so infuriating, like, I would compare him to a mosquito that is buzzing around your room that you just cannot kill, which is also something that happens in this novella. It's a very fun, like, dichotomy of actual mosquito versus human who's acting like a mosquito. I liked it a lot. But my favorite from this Amazon collection is called Slot Machine Fever Dreams. This story was wild. It starts with a woman who's a bartender at a casino talking to a guy who's just ordered a drink, and she's not really into him, but she's like, you know, maybe we should, like, go upstairs to your room. And he says, okay, let me organize that. And then shit gets crazy. I love this story. It was like a little bit action, a little bit thriller, a little bit romance. It was really fun. It was entirely my vibe. I would have read a 300-page book based on this novella. So that's just a little, if you want to read it, I would highly recommend. One of my favorites. Let's get into the actual physical books that I read. This might have some controversial opinions in it. I'm just going to say, I did not realize how many Freida McFadden books I read in June. There is quite a few. There's like 4 or 5 Freida McFadden books that I read in June. I think I spaced them out well enough that I didn't actually notice how many I was reading. But there are going to be some controversial Freida takes. I'm going to throw that out there. Let's let's get into it. Okay, so the first book. Oh, I'm also ranking these from least favorite to most favorite. Like, there are some that could like move up or down, but this is like a very general tier. So very, very bottom is Fuck Marriage by Taryn Fisher. I didn't even finish this book. I think I got 20 pages into this book and I decided this is not the vibe for me. I've had this on my shelves too long, right? I've had it on my shelves for way too long, and I thought, I never gravitate towards Taryn Fisher. Like, I have a lot of her books, I never go to read them. I did not enjoy what I read of this book. We follow a woman who's divorced. She moves back to the city that her ex lives in with his new girlfriend or his new wife, and her ex's best friend is like, hey, it's good to see you, and he's trying to be the nice guy. Based on what I read from the back of the book, he actually has always been in love with this woman. I don't even know her name. Billy. The ex's best friend, Satcher, has been in love with Billy for 10 years, and he's like, well shit, now they're divorced, like, I can shoot my shot. Billy, all she wants is revenge on her ex. And I don't know if this is a thriller or if it's a romance or if it's a weird combination of both, but I just wasn't vibing with it. I actually, like, 20 pages. I read 20 pages and I'm like, I'm actually not invested enough to try and decipher all this weird little fucking shit going on in this book. So I didn't just DNF it. I've also unhauled it. Yeah, that is going straight to savers because I don't want it on my shelves anymore. Actually looking at it just stresses me out because I've never been so confused in the first 20 pages of a book before. Okay, cool. Next, another unhaul. It is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. I don't know what to say about this book other than I thought it was going to be good. Because people seem to really love Gillian Flynn. I have never read one of her books. I've seen the movie Gone Girl. I've read The Grown Up, which is a novella. Never read one of her actual novels before. This book follows a woman, who's to know, what's her name? Libby. When Libby is 7 years old, she is in her house with her family, and her mum and her two sisters all end up dead. She hears that her brother is in the house, and she is basically the witness testimony that convicts him and puts him in prison for life. Now she's a little bit older, she's struggling, no one really cares about her as being the sole survivor of this massacre, and she decides to like kind of join a true crime group that gets together to try and solve unsolved crimes. And they basically are implying, you know, there's basically no evidence apart from your testimony that should have convicted your brother. Like, there's no evidence that he killed anybody in that house, and your 7-year-old self is the only reason he's in prison. So she kind of decides, okay, well, I need to figure out what actually happened that night, because if it wasn't my brother, I have falsely convicted him for all these years. I thought I was really going to enjoy this. I definitely did not. I don't think the payoff was satisfying. I think for how long this book is, like, it's not long, like, not ridiculously long, but it's 420 pages. I thought for something that was this long, the payoff and the twist at the end would be amazing. I thought I would enjoy the writing style more. None of those things hit for me. I think it was just so long-winded, and it wasn't like a singular plot twist. It was like a little twist here and a little twist there and a little twist there, and by the end of the book, when you look at all the twists and the complete puzzle, it's so unsatisfying. But I'm telling you, man, everyone raves about Gillian Flynn being one of the best thriller authors, and I have yet to see it. Basically, from here on out, I didn't dislike any of these books. I really disliked the two that I've just talked about. I didn't dislike any of these books. I've decided to keep all of these books, but there are various levels of enjoyment that we're going to go through. So if you guys saw my May wrap up, you'll see that I read Cold Thin Air Volume 1. In June, I finished Volume 2. This one was not as strong as Volume 1, which I really thought Volume 2 would be strong because of the story Borosca, and I really loved reading Borosca. There was one called Room 733, which I listened to as a creepypasta back when I was a teenager, but for the most part, these stories were just not as strong. I actually, for several of these stories, had to go on Reddit to CK Walker's original posts on r/nosleep and read the comments to see if people could decipher what the fucking ending meant, because I had no idea. I'd be sitting there going, but does that mean this or does that mean that? And I had to go on Reddit to find the answers. So I don't think this was as strong as Volume 1, personally. I'm going to keep it because it does have Borosca, and I've decided that that is one of my new favourite Reddit stories, and I guess the rest of the story is just going to have to live on my shelf anyway. I didn't explain it in this video. This is a short story collection of basically the creepy short stories you find on r/nosleep, and they are all compiled. So it's by the singular author, and I bought this specifically because it has a story called Broska in it, which I enjoyed, but the rest, like it was fine. Next, this was actually, like, I enjoyed it more than Cold Thin Air Volume 2, but I'm disappointed by it more as well. It is When She Returned by Lucinda Berry. We're going to discuss Lucinda Berry once more in this video, but based on my experience with Lucinda Berry, I really thought that this was going to be like a 5-star. This was a book, basically I had a bunch of my Lucinda Berry paperbacks and I gave them to my brother and I said, read the backs of these books, tell me which one I should read. And he picked this one, and based on the synopsis, I was like full agreement, it sounded so good. And it didn't really pay off for me. This follows a woman named Kate. 11 years ago, Kate vanishes from a car park, leaving behind her young daughter and her husband. And obviously, right after the disappearance, people assumed that it was the husband that did something and like got rid of his wife. But then, in present day, Kate comes back home. She's got a newborn in tow, and she's got all these different signs of physical and mental abuse, and they think, holy shit, she was actually kidnapped. How did she survive? So the story follows Kate's POV from before she went missing, and then we follow her daughter's current POV and her husband's new wife's POV, which was very, very uncomfortable for a lot of the book. But we obviously we have the present timeline, and then we are getting Kate's past timeline, and it slowly catches up to the present, which was done really well, I will grant that. I don't necessarily think Meredith's POV was entirely necessary. It became kind of important towards the end, but for the most part, Meredith's POV was kind of like, well, my husband's ex-wife is back, I guess I'm the other woman. And it was very like, woe is me, which I understand. She was in a really shit situation, fair enough. Like, you marry someone who assumes that his wife has been dead this whole time, and then lol jokes, she's actually been alive. But what annoyed me the most about this book was the disappointment. I understand Lucinda Berry. Let's like read her little thingy at the back of the book. Lucinda Berry is a trauma psychologist and a leading researcher in childhood trauma. And from what I've read of her books so far, I understand that she very much delves more into the psychological torture and trauma someone has gone through, as opposed to writing a really interesting plot twist. Like, I understand that she's not a Freida McFadden. She's not going to go for the cheap, quick thrills. She really wants to delve into someone's psyche. But this is a book. I don't want to say anything else about this book. It just, the way I thought it was going to go. I didn't like that one of the characters made a prediction about Kate quite early on in the book and then turned out to be right. I would have loved for that character to be proven wrong at some point, but they weren't. They were justified in all of their beliefs, and I don't know if I want to unhaul this book. Like, I really didn't enjoy it enough to keep it, but I understand that it's a well-written book and it's well crafted and it really does explore trauma. I loved all of that. I just didn't like the book as a whole, so I don't know what I'm doing with that book. Great. Next, I have got Talk a Dirty Cowboy by Elle Thorpe. Elle Thorpe is an Australian author. I bought this series of her books because they all have sprayed edges, which are really beautiful. A foily, there we go, a foil cover, and they were all signed by Elle Thorpe herself. This is the first book in the series. Basically, this series overall follows bull riders. Like, that's the general job of all the MMCs in this series. This book follows Bowen, who lost his wife while he was actually on a bull ride, and he's decided that since her passing, he is going to do anything he can to win the title, because like the championship title, because if he was bull riding when she died and he wasn't there for her, the very least he can do in her memory is to be the champion. And he also has a son. We also follow Paisley. Paisley is a single mother of 2. She's singing one night after she sent her kids to bed, and she jumps onto her son's Xbox like, hey, I'll try out one of these games and see if it helps, like with all my issues. And she actually hears Bowen and she thinks, oh my god, my son has been talking to an adult. Like, my son has been talking to a child predator. And then she realizes, like, oh no, this man's son and my son are friends. They kind of strike up this friendship as like 2 single parents with kids in a similar age, and it's very much friends to lovers. Like, they become each other's support systems, and then it develops into more. It was nice. Like, it was a nice, quick, easy romance, but it was a little bit too easy. Like, the stakes weren't that high, so I enjoyed it. I will be keeping it, but it is not a new favorite. next we have got the first appearance of the Queen. Frida McFadden's The Housemaid is Watching. I am so disappointed in this book. Not for the plot. Plot was fine. Thought that was interesting. My biggest issue with this book is the bastardization of Enzo. Enzo is meant to be good guy material. Like, Enzo is meant to be a fucking flaming green flag. And in this book, Enzo just sucked. I filmed myself while reading this book. It hasn't been posted anywhere. Maybe if I still have it on my phone, I'll insert it now. So, third book in the Housemaid series came out today. The Housemaid is Watching. I'm 200 pages in. I'm about halfway. And I'm about to fucking lose my shit, guys. But I did not like what they did to his character. This is a man, okay, who we're supposed to assume is like relatively smart, who is very loyal, who respects women. And he did not respect Millie in this book. He didn't respect her feelings. He kept on being like, oh, you're paranoid. Oh, you're being silly. Oh, Millie, you poor silly little woman with your jealousy issues. Calm down, sweetie. And it was not the Enzo that I grew to love in the first two books in the series. I will also say it is quite a jarring jump. The first two Housemaid books, I think they take place within like a year or two of each other. This jumps 10 years in the future. Like, Millie is middle-aged in this book, and I was not expecting that. But, you know, again, the plot, the twist, the reveals, that was all fine. All of that was fun. It's just the fact that Enzo pissed me off so much in this book. Enzo was no shit my favorite character from the last two books, and to have him be actually a terrible husband in this book fully pissed me off. So that's why it's so low on the list. I still enjoyed it. Like I said, I still enjoyed the plot. It was still fine. I'm still gonna keep it. But how dare Frida destroy my Enzo's personality like that? That really, really, it hurt something deep in my soul. Next, we have got another book by Elle Thorpe. So it is the sequel to Talk Dirty Cowboy. It is Ride Dirty Cowboy. So the main focus of this book, when we start the book, we've got a bunch of people in the car, and basically the driver, Sonny, gets into a car accident. Sonny is dating Addie and his best friend Kai. They're all in the car. So they get into this car accident. Sonny, unfortunately, passes. And then we kind of flash forward to the day of Sonny's memorial. And in the previous book, we get this vibe that Kai really hates Addie. Like, doesn't think she's good enough for his best friend Sonny. Kai is really rude, really quiet, like doesn't talk to her, doesn't want to look her in the eye. And Addie kind of accepts, okay, he hates me because I'm taking him away from his best friend. Like, I'm taking up time with his best friend that he could be spending with his best friend. However, after Sonny passes, Addie's like, okay, well, I'm never going to see Kai again. But she's a journalist, and she actually ends up following the rodeo around America and ends up talking to Kai and finding out the reasons he was always so mean to her. This was definitely best friend's girlfriend and boyfriend's best friend, and not really enemies to lovers, but more like strong dislike, avoiding each other to being stuck in the same place. I liked it a lot. I actually think there was a couple of race issues in this book that were kind of important. I liked it. Again, it was quick, it was fun, but again, there weren't like many stakes in their relationship. I like a relationship where the slightest thing can fuck everything up, and that wasn't this book. And then I have got a book me and my friend Sarah decided we were going to read at the same time. It is Lilac by Baby Reed. This is a Why Choose romance between a girl and 3 members of a band that she has just joined. So we've got this band called Bound. Is that what they're called? I think it's what they're called. And their lead guitarist dies unexpectedly. They need a new member to continue going on tour, and then enters Braxton. Her name is Braxton. And then Braxton is hired to be their new lead guitarist. And initially, these 3 grown men are like, no, we don't want you. Like, we don't need you. We'll be fine just without you. Like, you're not part of our band. Like, just so you don't get too comfortable, like, keep it very clear in your stupid little woman head. You're not part of the band. You are a guest. You're a guest. But we're not going to treat you like a guest. We're going to treat you like shit. Basically, they treat her like she is the dirt on their shoes. But she's super attracted to all of them, and they happen to all be attracted to her. It becomes a who's she going to choose situation, which then turns into a why choose situation. It was fun. It was smutty. It was also extraordinarily long. It's like 550 pages of these 4 grown adults trying to figure out what they want from each other. It was still good. Like, I still enjoyed it. Next, I've got a duology that I wanted to like more than I did, but I still didn't dislike them. We have got Becoming Colder and Finding Eden by the Queen, Mia Sheridan. When you put the covers up like this, they kind of like do a little matchy-matchy vibe. These books follow our couple, Colder and Eden. Colder has essentially grown up in this religious commune, this off-the-grid community, which is most definitely a fucking cult. Like, do not get that. It is a cult. He's grown up there, so he kind of thinks it's normal. He does start questioning things about, like, why the leader of the cult gets running water and electricity in his cabin, but the rest of them don't. He has questions. But when he's, like, 10, I think, the religious leader of the commune brings home a child named Eden and says, the gods have spoken to me, and as soon as this young child turns 18, she is going to be my wife, and she's going to lead us all into the afterlife. And that's fine. A lot of people, like all the adults, are kind of like, oh yeah, okay, he's decided this child is going to be his future bride. That's normal. But Calder is like, okay, she's my age and she's already being prepped for marriage. Kind of weird. He also decides that he wants to befriend her, and they kind of start this unspoken non-verbal friendship where they kind of leave little presents for each other around the commune. It was relatively cute. By the time they're teenagers, they decide to kind of say, fuck the rules, we're going to be friends in secret. We're going to go hang out in secret where no one can see us, because Eden is not allowed to have friends, and Calder is kind of scared of the repercussions of getting caught with the leader's, for all intents and purposes, fiance. So that's the first book. I'm not going to get into the second, obviously, because it's got spoilers, but I will say you cannot just read one without the other. They're very much connected. I think where the first book leaves off, it picks up straight away in the second, so you kind of do need to read them both. I will say I enjoyed Becoming Colder slightly more. It was definitely a longer book. It was definitely a little bit slower, but a lot of things were actually happening. In Finding Eden, it is a lot of processing the trauma of being in a cult, processing the things that were done to them, and it's not plot focused, it's definitely character development focused. So, you know, I liked them. I'm gonna keep them. Moving on. I've got another Freedom McFadden book. It is The Perfect Son. This follows a woman named Erica. She's got 2 kids and a perfect husband. She loves her life. She kind of thinks her daughter's a bitch, which that whole plot was weird. She seemed to really fucking hate her daughter, but she is a simp for her son, Liam. She loves Liam, thinks he's perfect, he's popular, he gets good grades, he's polite to her, he loves her. But there have been signs in his past that maybe Liam is a sociopath. So when a girl at his school named Olivia goes missing, and it turns out that Liam was the last person that spoke to her, Erica is very much like, I love my son, I will support my son, I want to save him from himself, but I also need to find out if he actually did take this child, like if he did take this girl and kill her. We also get the POV of Olivia, and it was a pretty interesting read. I will give you that. I kind of predicted the ending just a tiny bit towards the end, but I still enjoyed it. It gave me very much the vibe of, I think my child is evil, but I still love them and I don't know what to do. Apparently there are a lot of books like that, because I've read so many books recently that have that kind of evil child, but I still love them trope. This didn't disappoint. This was quite the quick book. I enjoyed it. I think the epilogue was unnecessary. If you've read this book, like, I had a full rant to Sarah about the epilogue. I think it was so unnecessary. The book wrapped up so nicely, and then Frida just decides to drop in a little epilogue that puts into question everything that we thought was confirmed. I don't like when she does that. Like, for the most part, I'm just leave the epilogue off in thrillers because it just pisses me off. Next, I have got Sexy Dirty Cowboy by Al Thorpe. This is the last book in this little cowboy trilogy. This one follows not a bull rider, but a bullfighter. So after the bull rider has jumped off the bull and runs back behind the gate, the bullfighter is the one who kind of gets the bull back into its cage. This follows a character we're introduced to in the last book. His name is Rem. Rem has a bit of a shady past, and he, on one of their shows, I think it's actually the championship, like that actual round of the tournament, he ends up getting arrested and being told, hey, we know you have a shady past. there is someone who's turned up murdered that we could definitely blame on you, but we're not trying to blame it on you, we're trying to blame it on someone else from your past. So if you could testify against them, that'd be great. And Rem's like, okay, but if they find out that I'm testifying, I'm definitely going to end up dead as well. They decide to put him in witness protection, and in order to make sure he doesn't do a runner, they put one of their own cops in witness protection with him. And her name is Whitney, so that is the two of them. So Rem and Whitney. And Rem basically says, the only thing I'm asking for is that you let me be somewhere in the countryside. Like, I'm sick of the city, let me do witness protection in a small country town. And he and Whitney, you know, forced proximity, they have to pretend they're a married couple because how they explain their situation to people. And I really enjoyed it. This had like thrillery aspects that I enjoyed, but their romance was also the most interesting to me. How they meet, their situation, the way they have to pretend that it was juicy. So definitely my favorite of the series, but I do think it's important to read the first two books to understand how we got to this point. So it's up to you. Next, I adore this book, like absolutely adore this book. But it broke my heart. I'm talking about Maeve Fly by C.J. Lead. This book follows a woman named Maeve Fly. She works at, let's just call a spade a spade. She works at Disney World, and she plays, I think she plays Elsa. So that's her daytime job. She's a bit of a sociopath. Like, she lives in California. And she loves California. She loves how fake it all is. Because she's also quite fake. Like, she pretends to be a normal person, but she definitely has darker thoughts and doesn't really feel like a normal person. I don't know how much else I can say about this book. I kind of went into it blind and I kind of preferred it that way. Basically, her best friend's brother ends up moving into town and he seems to see something in her that he recognizes from himself. And Maeve is like, no chance this guy sees anything in me. No one has ever looked at me and seen the real me. So she kind of tries to avoid him. They kind of strike up this relationship and I enjoyed this. Some bits of it were a little bit slow, but for the most part, this is a solid Halloween read. There is a lot of music mentioned in this book. Like, Maeve talks about her favorite, like, Halloween spooky season songs. I googled Maeve Fly playlist and it came up with an interview from C.J. Lead, and describes all the songs she mentions in the book and has like a fun little paragraph about like why she likes that song so much or how it influenced her or why she included it in this book. And it is like, that is a good Halloween playlist. It is a solid playlist. If I remember, I will link the article in the description, but those songs are all such a good Halloween vibe. They're all So I loved that aspect. The ending fully broke my heart. I don't know how to explain it to you other than I finished the book and I sat there going, why? Why would you do that? It hurt me so much. But I really did enjoy it. I don't know if I like this cover more than the American cover. I think this is kind of fun because she does just look like a princess who's got an affiliation with eyes. It was just so good though. I really enjoyed it. I'm sorry if the lighting is changing. It went from fully sunny outside to completely overcast. Melbourne weather. Happy Sunday. Next, I finally read Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. So this audiobook was actually available at my library. This follows an ice skater and a hockey player. Basically, they have two ice rinks at their university, but one of them ends up compromised. So the hockey team and the ice skaters end up having to share a single ice rink. And that is when Anastasia and Nate meet. Nate basically gets banned from playing hockey due to this other rink being compromised, and Anastasia's ice skating partner also ends up injured, so he can't practice with her. So these two kind of bond while Nate steps in to be her like surrogate partner. And this book was just soft, smutty good times. There was no third act breakup in this. I don't know if that counts as a spoiler, but I'm so used to books having that penultimate moment where everything falls apart, where the couple decides it's not worth it to get hurt and in this relationship. It's just not worth it. These two, solid as shit. Like, I liked this book because when they both decided to put their all into this relationship, they actually meant it. And there was no third act breakup. There was third act drama. There was definitely a climax, but it didn't have to do with these two breaking up, which was really refreshing. I really enjoyed it. It was a bit long for a romance book. Like, it is just a simple contemporary romance. Don't know why it needed to be over 400 pages long. But that's neither here nor there. Next, I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. This book, this book is definitely romance, but it also deals a lot with a friendship group. And, you know, being quiet and keeping secrets to not upset the vibe of a friendship group, which I've definitely been in that situation. But we follow Harriet and Wynne. They go on vacation with their group of friends every year, except this year they're actually broken up. They've been broken up for 6 months and their friendship group doesn't know. So when they all get together for vacation, Wynne and Harriet have to pretend that they're still a couple, because really awkward if they show up and say, by the way, we've been broken up for 6 months. So they decide just to fake being together. The biggest issue I had with this book, like, I love this book. I thought it was good vibes. My biggest issue with this is that at some points I found their friendship group quite toxic. And I don't know if that's obviously, I don't think what was intended. I think Emily Henry really wanted to paint this group of people as super solid, super tight. But personally, there was, towards the end, when that moment when everything goes to shit, some of the things that got brought up in this friendship group, I was like, why are you guys so entwined in each other's lives? Like, Harriet kind of gets tricked by one of her friends, and I'm just saying that if my friend pulled that shit with me, they would not be my friend anymore. I've put up with so much shit in prior friendships that now I'm very cutthroat, and reading about some of the shit that Harriet and Wynne's friends did, it was nice. They all forgave each other. Everything was reconciled by the end. And in fiction, I'm like, okay, sure. But if that was real life, I would be like, Harriet, Wynne, run. Don't look back. But like, apart from that, I really enjoyed it. You know, one bed situation, having to share a bedroom. It was good vibes. Next, another Frida book, One by One. This one was just a fun slashery time. We follow a group of friends, again, I think it's 3 sets of couples, that all decide to go to a cabin for the weekend or for the week. But their truck or their car breaks down before they get there, and they end up wandering around in the fucking forest for days. As one by one, they all kind of die. I don't really want to say anything more than that. Like, that's all I knew going into it, and this book was so fucking fun. What an unlikable main character, first of all. Like, woman needs to get her priorities in order, needs to figure out what she wants in life, but it was really fun. Like, I had such a good time. It is such a short book. It's like 200 and something pages. 250 pages. Such a short, fun read, but I loved it. I really loved it. I think the ending is a little bit predictable. Oh, maybe not. It's one of those endings where it doesn't surprise you once you've read it, because you can see how easily it would have been to get to that conclusion. Either way, I really enjoyed this book. In typical Frida fashion, she added an epilogue that was unnecessary. Like, again, this book, for the most part, like, everything is kind of wrapped up neatly in a nice little bow, and then Frida goes, but what if? And I hate that. I hated it in The Perfect Son. I hated it in this. Frida needs to just, sometimes I will, look, we're going to talk about another epilogue, but I actually enjoyed. But for the most part, this girl needs to stop with the epilogues, because it's just like, it's kind of like a fuck you to the reader. Like, thank you for getting to the end of my book. Thank you so much for enjoying it, but fuck you. That's how I feel. But we continue on. Next, I've got The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrane. This book, I love this book. This book is LGBT perfection. We follow 2 men. We follow Dev and we follow Charlie. Charlie has been chosen to, I'm not going to go through the terms that are in the book. He's basically chosen to be the bachelor for this most current season. But Charlie is very socially awkward. He doesn't like any attention on him. He doesn't really like physical contact with people he's not comfortable with. But he's chosen to be the bachelor, so he's expected to be this perfect knight in shining armor. Dev is not a producer, but he kind of preps the contestants on The Bachelor and tries to see which contestants would match the best together. So he basically becomes Charlie's friend, as in, look, I'm going to try and get you through this because you need to get through this show per your contract, and I need to get through this show because my job relies on this show being interesting to viewers. So these two kind of strike up a friendship. But lo and behold, it turns out that Charlie isn't really interested in any of the girls on The Bachelor. He's interested in Dev. This book was so fucking cute. I don't know why. Every time I pick up an Alice Cochrane, I don't know how to pronounce that name. Every time I pick up one of her books, I think, maybe it's not going to be that great. Like, you know, if I don't enjoy it, I'll DNF it. But every time I'm so pleasantly surprised by her books. So this was just such a strong romance. I have recommended it to Sarah, because Sarah, I don't think, has ever read a male-male romance, and I was like, girly, this is the one to read. I've got 4 more books to go. These, from this point on, they aren't necessarily in an order. These are just my top books of the month. 2 of them are by the same author. And who's that author? It's Frida McFadden. Do Not Disturb by Frida McFadden. This book, we start off following a woman whose name is Quinn. At the start of the book, Quinn's like, oops, I killed my husband. Guess I gotta go on the run now. So she decides to go on the run. And she's on the highway. She's about to get stuck in a blizzard and decides to stop at a shady looking little motel on the side of the road. The hotel owner, kind of nice, super shady. She finds out that a woman was previously murdered in the room next door to hers, which freaks her out a little bit. Meanwhile, Quinn's sister back at home is like, oh my god, I can't believe she actually killed him. Like, why would she do that? I need to find her. Like, if she's on the run, like, I need her to come back home. Like, I don't want to lose my sister. So then Quinn's sister, I want to say Claire. I'm going to call her Claire. The sister Claire decides to kind of go searching for her sister and try and bring her home before she gets accused of running away from a murder. Now, I'm going to stop right there with the little synopsis. What I'm going to say is there was a point about halfway in this book. This chapter ends with a specific sentence. And after in that sentence, I thought, oh, I know exactly where this book is going to go, because it reminds me so much of another piece of media. And then the next chapter starts with, I bet you thought this book was going to be like that exact piece of media. It's not. So Frida really, really punked me. I was so sure. I was like, I know exactly where this book is going. I figured out the plot. This is going to be like basically a whole tribute to this other piece of media. And then the very next sentence she goes, oh, lol, jokes, tricked you. So I really enjoyed this book. It was, again, fun, fast paced. And I think I was happy with the ending. I think it was a satisfying ending. I think all of the characters in this book have a lot of problems, but I kind of understood them all. Well, except for one character. One character was like, get the fuck out of here, you suck. But everyone else, I was like, I get that you got problems. It's fine, we'll look past them. Next we've got the last Frida McFadden book I read in June, but I have since read some Frida books in July. So apparently I'm going to read every single book Frida has published. That's apparently a goal that I unintentionally set myself this year. But the next Frida book I read in the month of June is The Teacher. I think, honestly, to date, this might be my first or second favorite Frida book. Like, I think it is right up there with the first Housemaid. This book was so fucking well done. I know that a lot of people out there are very uncomfortable about the subject matter. This book follows a couple, Eve and Nate, and they are both teachers at the same high school. And Eve is very well aware that last year there was a scandal about a teacher-student relationship. That teacher essentially got fired, and she has now got the student involved in this scandal in her classroom. And because the teacher who got fired was actually her friend and her mentor, she is incredibly apprehensive around this girl. Meanwhile, we have got the girl, Addie. We've got her point of view and how she's essentially getting involved in another inappropriate relationship at her school. And that's all I really want to say. I understand that people who are teachers or who have kids at high school may be very uncomfortable with this subject matter. As someone who hasn't been in a high school in a super long time, I was just here for all of this goodness. I just feel like so many people thought this book was disgusting. I get it. It is. Like, if this was real life, it would be disgusting. However, this is a piece of fiction, and I was here for the vibes. And this is one of the cases where the epilogue, it made everything so much better, because the epilogue didn't really leave me with a what if question. The epilogue made me realize, oh, I was wrong about a lot of things. So I think this might be better than The Housemaid, if I'm being completely honest with you. I feel like that is such an unpopular take. I did not dislike a single moment of reading this book. I enjoyed this reading experience so thoroughly. I think even Sarah said, like, she really, really enjoyed this book. So I'm sorry if this affected you badly. I'm sorry if it affected your mental health poorly. Know your trigger warnings. I knew this book was not going to affect me whatsoever. I just was going to be intrigued and entertained, which I was. But if, you know, high school settings and inappropriate relationships in a high school setting are going to trigger you, probably don't read this book. That's all I'm going to say. But I really enjoyed it. 5 out of 5. Highly recommend. Next we have got what was the first in me and my friends' mini little book club book of the month. I picked Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. I don't know if it's possible for people to have not heard about this book. We follow two characters, Sloane and Rowan. Sloane is a serial killer and Rowan also a serial killer. These people aren't, you know, let's just grab a random woman off the street and stab her to death. These two specifically target other serial killers. They target predators, basically really like the depths of society. Like, yeah, they are killers themselves, but they're trying to rid the world of all the bad shit. And they end up meeting one day and decide to strike up this little game between each other where each year they will get an address texted to them, and the first one to find their target and kill that target is the winner for that year. But romance, they fall in love. This book was disgusting and it was hilarious, and it surprisingly gave me such positive gooey vibes for a book about two serial killers serial killing together. I don't even know what to say. I mean, I feel like for this book, I'm just gonna say it again. Check your trigger warnings. There is a full page and a half of content warnings at the start of this book and in the audiobook. I personally, again, I'm not the kind of reader that needs content warnings, so I skipped past them because they do tend to spoil the book as well. They have very specific trigger warnings in this book, but I had such a fun time. I have nothing bad to say about this book, except the ice cream was kind of gross. But also, you know, I got it. I was there for it. It made sense to me. This is the last book I read in June. Another controversial pick. I have thoughts, I have feelings. But this book is the only book I read in June that actually made me cry. Like, watered my eyes. A single glistening little tear fell down my cheek. It is Saving Noah by Lucinda Berry. I've owned Saving Noah for quite some time. I decided to read it, and reading this is what inspired me to then pick up When She Returned. Different vibes. That's why When She Returned was such a disappointment, because this book was so impactful to me. We follow a woman named Adrian. This book, okay, so basically at the very, very start of the book, we follow Adrian's point of view. She is a mother of two, and she has just found out that her son, Noah, has sexually assaulted children, little girls. And he kind of has told her. She decides that she has to tell the parents of these girls what's happened. And from there, her life completely fucking changes. And having a convicted child predator as a son, I felt so bad for Adrian. I don't know, I'm not a parent. I don't plan on ever being a parent, so I guess some of it was kind of hard for me to relate to. As an outside perspective, as a child of someone, I loved Adrian's ride or die for her son. Like, I don't care what he's done, he is still my child. I still love him. I will support him to the end. I want to save him. I want to be there for him. As a child, I respect that so much. As someone who's old enough to have children, I don't know if I could have the same perspective. It was a really difficult, tricky book. It definitely made me cry. Based on what I've told you, I don't really think checking your trigger warnings will make a difference. Like, that's basically what this book is about. It is following the mother of a convicted child predator and how she's trying to come to terms with the fact that he is her child, but he has also destroyed other children. It was a lot, but it was just so fucking well done. I actually don't know what else I could say about this. If you think you can handle it, I would definitely recommend it. So that is all the books I read in June. We're just gonna throw it out there, guys. July has not been as successful. We are, 2 full weeks into July. I don't think I've read that much. I think I've probably read like 4 or 5 books. So July, it's not going to be a super successful reading month. I've just been very, very stressed out at work. What's fucking new? But yeah, so, you know, depression. I've been sleeping a lot. I've been sleeping instead of reading. So I hope I can get past that because I've got so many new books to read. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. And if you made it to the end, I will see you later.